I've been a graphic designer for 8 years now, but lately everything I create feels the same. I work at Skyline Design, a mid-sized agency in San Francisco, where the projects are endless but somehow empty. Brochures, logos, websites, they're all just designs on paper, nothing that truly excites me or gives me a sense of purpose. I'm good at what I do, no doubt about that. My boss, Greg Mitchell, has been dropping hints about a promotion. Senior designer, my own office, a nice raise. On paper, it sounds perfect. But every morning, when my alarm rings and I drag myself out of bed, I feel a tight knot in my chest. I'm stuck in the same routine, the same projects, the same lack of fulfillment. I wake up to the same city, the same office, the same dull tasks. I can't shake this feeling that I'm not doing what I'm meant to be doing. The worst part is, I don't even know what else I should be doing. I've spent years climbing the ladder, playing the part, and now I'm starting to wonder if it was all for nothing. Have you ever felt that way? Like you've been following a path, thinking it's the right one, only to realize it's not the life you imagined? That's where I'm at. I've always been good at fitting in, good at meeting expectations, but the more I follow this path, the more I feel suffocated. The problem is, I'm not sure what my real path is. Every day feels like I'm just going through the motions, checking off boxes, doing what I'm told. But deep down, I know I'm not living the life I want. I just don't know what that life looks like. It was a Wednesday morning in late March when everything shifted. I was sitting in my usual cafe, beans and brews, trying to focus on yet another corporate website design. The cafe was quiet, only me, the barista, and an older woman sitting by the window. I didn't think much of her at first. She looked like just another regular customer, but when she stood up and walked over to my table, I couldn't ignore the odd energy she carried. She had this presence, something different. Her gray hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and her hands trembled slightly as she approached. She had the kind of look that made you wonder if she knew something you didn't. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft and hesitant. I looked up, startled. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to hide the confusion in my voice. She sat down across from me, uninvited. "You don't know me," she said, "but I need to tell you something." Her words threw me off. What could she possibly want to say to me? I didn't know this woman, and yet her gaze seemed to pierce right through me, almost like she could see something I couldn't. I felt a strange shiver run down my spine. "In 3 days, you'll have a choice to make," she continued, leaning forward. "Choose the unexpected." I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. It sounded like something out of a bad movie, something no one would believe. But there was something in her eyes, something deep and certain, that made me listen. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she simply said, 3 days, choose the unexpected. And then, just as quickly as she had appeared, she stood up and walked out. No further explanation, no goodbye. I sat there, stunned, staring after her as she disappeared out the door. What the hell just happened? The rest of that day was a blur. I tried to go back to my work, focusing on the client's website I was designing, but all I could think about was the woman's words. Choose the unexpected. What did she mean? How could a choice in 3 days change anything for me? It felt like some sort of cosmic joke, but something inside me couldn't shake the feeling that it was real. I kept replaying the scene in my head, her eyes locked onto mine, her voice so calm and certain. She wasn't just some random stranger. There was purpose in what she said. I hadn't believed in fate or destiny before, but now I couldn't help wondering if this was some strange sign. When I got to the office, I mentioned the encounter to Emma, my friend and colleague. She laughed, clearly thinking it was just some quirky experience I'd had. "Maybe she was just an eccentric old lady," Emma said, flipping through a design mock-up on her computer. "You know how people get sometimes. She probably just wanted to talk to someone." I nodded, trying to brush it off. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was overthinking it, letting a random encounter affect me too much. But deep down, I couldn't let go of the feeling that this wasn't just a coincidence. The day dragged on. Greg, my boss, called me into his office later in the afternoon. I could tell from the way he smiled that he had some good news. Greg's a nice guy, but I've always gotten the sense that his idea of success is what everyone else thinks it is. Promotions, raises, titles. everything I thought I should be working toward. But today, it didn't feel like good news to me. Max, I've got some great news, Greg said, leaning back in his chair. The partners are meeting next week, and we're going to offer you the senior designer position. My heart didn't race like it used to when I'd heard similar news in the past. I should have been thrilled, but instead, all I felt was an overwhelming sense of apathy. It wasn't the promotion that made me feel this way, it was the realization that I didn't want it. That's great, I said flatly, trying to keep my voice steady. Greg looked at me, a little puzzled. You don't seem excited. Max, this is huge. Senior designer? It's a big step up. Most people don't get there this fast. I know, I muttered, trying to sound convincing. I'm just processing it. Greg raised an eyebrow, but he didn't press further. Later, I went home to dinner with my parents, Mary and John. They always asked about work, about my future, as if there was a checklist I should be following. And there it was again, the talk about buying a house, settling down. At 29, they were starting to worry that I wasn't on the same timeline they had for me. You know, Max, my mom said, glancing at me over the dinner table. You're getting to that age. Have you thought about buying a place? Maybe you should start thinking about your future. I felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. Everything in their world seemed so predictable, like they had the map of life figured out. But when I looked at my own life, I realized I wasn't even sure I wanted to follow that same map. I told them about the woman in the cafe and the strange warning. I wasn't sure why I shared it with them. Maybe I just needed to voice my confusion. But my dad just frowned. Sounds like a scam, son, he said. Just ignore it. People are weird. Mom, always the softer one, just patted my hand. There are a lot of troubled people in the city, sweetie. Just be careful. They didn't understand, and I didn't expect them to. But something about that conversation only deepened my uncertainty. I couldn't shake the feeling that the woman's warning meant something more. I needed to figure out what it was. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of certainty. Today was the day something would happen. I didn't know why I felt it so strongly, but I did. I went through my routine, though it felt almost mechanical. My mind kept drifting back to her words, even as I tried to focus on work. At 3:12 p.m., my phone rang, unknown number. My heart jumped. I answered it, feeling the anticipation grow. Hello, Max Thompson? The voice on the other end was calm but firm. Yes, I replied, throat dry. My name is Gerald Foster, the voice continued. I'm calling from a law firm in Cascade Bay, Oregon. I need to speak with you about an inheritance. I froze. Inheritance? My stomach dropped. I had no idea who this was. An inheritance? I repeated, almost in disbelief. You've inherited property from a woman named Clara Mason, Gerald said. I need you to come to our office to discuss the details. Clara Mason? I didn't recognize the name. Yes, she's your biological aunt, he added. She passed away recently, and you're the sole heir to her estate. The room spun. I had no idea what was happening, but the idea that I had inherited something from someone I'd never met was enough to leave me speechless. Clara Mason? I asked again, trying to piece this together. Who is she? She's your biological aunt, Gerald repeated. She owned a bookstore and cafe in Cascade Bay. It's yours now. Cascade Bay. I'd never been there. I didn't know anyone there. Yet something in me knew this wasn't just a mistake. It felt real, and it felt like a sign. I need to think about this, I stammered, still processing everything. I understand, but I recommend you come to see us soon. The estate is yours, and we can discuss the next steps. I was still in shock as I hung up the phone. An inheritance? From an aunt I didn't even know existed? What the hell was going on? But I knew one thing. I needed to go. This was the unexpected, just like the woman had said. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. Who was Clara Mason? Why hadn't I known about her? Why had she left me her estate? It felt surreal, like something out of a movie, but everything about the phone call felt too real to ignore. I knew I had to go, but even as I packed my bags that morning for the trip to Cascade Bay, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't predict. The flight to Oregon was quick, and by the time I landed, I felt like I was in a different world. Cascade Bay was a quiet coastal town, far removed from the hustle of San Francisco. The air smelled of salt water and pine, and the streets were lined with old buildings that seemed to tell stories of years gone by. The contrast to the fast-paced corporate life I'd left behind couldn't have been more stark. I had no idea what I was walking into, but something inside me told me this was where I needed to be. Gerald's office was in a converted Victorian house near the bay. I could hear the faint sound of waves crashing against the shore as I walked in. The atmosphere was calm, almost serene, with soft lighting and old furniture that gave the place a comforting, lived-in feel. Gerald Foster, the attorney who had called me, greeted me with a firm handshake and a warm smile. He was in his 60s, with graying hair and kind eyes that immediately put me at ease. "Mr. Thompson, it's a pleasure to meet you in person," Gerald said, leading me to a small conference room. "Please, take a seat." I sat down, trying to shake the sense of disbelief that still clung to me. "I don't understand," I said, my voice tinged with confusion. "Who was Clara Mason? How did I not know about her?" Gerald nodded, taking a seat across from me. "Clara was your biological aunt, your mother's sister. She was a kind and private woman. Unfortunately, your mother and her had a falling out many years ago, and your mother didn't want you to know about her. When you were adopted, it was a closed adoption, so Clara never had a chance to meet you." I felt a knot tighten in my chest. I had always known I was adopted, but I had never felt the need to search for my biological family. I had a good life with my adoptive parents, Mary and John, but hearing that there was someone out there, someone who knew about me, and who had kept track of me over the years, was unsettling. "Clara lived here in Cascade Bay for many years," Gerald continued. "She ran a small bookstore and cafe that was beloved by the community. She never married, and she never had children. When she passed away recently, she left everything to you. You're the only heir." I blinked, trying to absorb it all. "A bookstore and cafe?" I echoed, still in disbelief. "Why would she leave it to me?" Gerald's expression softened. "Clara knew about you, Max. She kept up with your life, following your career from a distance. She was proud of the man you had become, but she also regretted not being able to be a part of your life, not being there when you grew up. She left you the cafe because she wanted to give you the chance to start something meaningful, something that might allow you to make a life that felt more authentic than the one you're leading right now." The words hit me hard. Clara, a stranger to me, had somehow seen something in me that I hadn't been able to see in myself. She knew I was unhappy, and she had left me this place, this legacy, as an opportunity to create something different. I felt overwhelmed, unsure of what to do with all of this. It wasn't just a property. It was a chance to leave the life I'd built behind and build something that felt real. Gerald handed me a thick folder filled with documents, including Clara's will. "Here's everything you need to know about the property. It's in good condition, but it needs some work. The cafe has been closed for a few months now, but it has the potential to thrive again. The choice is yours. You can sell it, take the money, and go back to your life, or you can try something new. It's all up to you." I sat there, holding the folder, staring at it. The cafe, Clara's legacy, was now in my hands. I could sell it and walk away, continue down the safe, predictable path I'd been on. Or I could stay, take a leap, and try to build something real, something that mattered. After a few moments of silence, I finally spoke. "I need to see it. I need to see the cafe for myself before I make any decisions." Gerald smiled. "I thought you might say that." He stood up. "Let me show you." As I followed him out of the office, a strange sense of calm washed over me. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally moving in the right direction. We drove through the winding roads of Cascade Bay, the ocean on one side, the mountains on the other. As we approached the cafe, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation building in my chest. What was I expecting? I wasn't sure. I just knew that I needed to see it for myself, to understand what Clara had left me, and whether it was something I could take on or walk away from. The Driftwood Cafe, as it was called, was nestled right along the edge of town, just a stone's throw from the water. It was the kind of place that at first glance seemed to have a soul. The exterior was weathered, the paint chipped in places, but there was a charm to it. The kind of charm you could only find in a place that had withstood the test of time. The windows were large, letting in the light, and the sign out front swayed gently in the breeze. I could almost see Clara standing there, welcoming customers, serving coffee with a smile, her world revolving around this little piece of home. Gerald parked the car, and I stepped out, taking in the surroundings. The smell of salt in the air mixed with the faint scent of pine from the nearby trees. I could hear the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore, a peaceful rhythm that felt both foreign and comforting. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I needed to feel it. We walked inside, the bell above the door chiming as we entered. The place was dark, dust motes floating in the rays of light that filtered through the windows. It looked as though it had been closed for some time. The tables and chairs were slightly askew, the counter cluttered with forgotten mugs and a few scattered books. But there was an undeniable warmth to it, an inviting energy that made me feel like I was walking into someone's home rather than a business. "Here it is," Gerald said, his voice gentle. "Clara's pride and joy." I nodded, my eyes scanning the room. The cafe was small, cozy, with mismatched furniture that somehow worked together. The walls were lined with shelves full of books, some old, some newer, a mix of genres that spoke to Clara's eclectic taste. There was a fireplace in the corner, its mantel adorned with seashells and small trinkets. It was clear that this place had history, that Clara had poured her heart into it. But I couldn't help but notice the state it was in. The wear and tear, the neglect. The cafe had potential, but it needed work. A lot of work. Gerald walked around the room, his hands resting on the back of one of the chairs. The community loved this place. Clara knew everyone by name. It wasn't just a cafe, it was a gathering spot, a place where people came to share stories and find comfort. I sat down at one of the tables, trying to imagine it full of life, bustling with conversation and laughter. But the silence now felt heavy. "Do you think it's worth saving?" I asked Gerald, my voice tinged with uncertainty. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "It's not about the money. It's about the legacy. Clara wanted you to have the choice, Max. She believed in you. She believed this place could become something special again. But only if you're willing to invest in it. Emotionally, financially, it's up to you." I stared at the worn-out bookshelves, the empty chairs, the dust-covered counter. This wasn't the kind of place I had envisioned when I thought about a career change. It would take everything I had to bring it back to life. But something in me, something deep down, told me I couldn't just let it go. Not now. Not when Clara had entrusted me with it. I stood up, feeling the weight of the decision press down on me. I think I'm gonna try. I want to bring it back. I want to see what it can become." Gerald smiled, his expression proud. "I thought you might say that." As I stood there, looking out at the ocean through the cafe's large windows, I realized that this place wasn't just a cafe. It was a chance to create something real, to build something that mattered. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was making the right choice. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I felt ready to take the leap. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. As soon as I made the decision to restore the Driftwood Cafe, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just working to fix a building, I was building a future, one that felt real and meaningful. The work was overwhelming at times, but with every coat of paint I applied, every chair I moved, and every crack I repaired, I began to feel a deeper connection to this place. Clara had left me something more than just property. She had left me a legacy, and I was determined not to let it fade away. Lily, the cafe's manager, was the first person I turned to for help. When I first arrived in Cascade Bay, she had been distant, skeptical of my intentions. But as we started working together, something began to change. She was a tough, no-nonsense woman in her early 30s with sharp eyes and a quick wit. At first, she had her doubts, questioning whether I would even stick around long enough to make a real difference. But I could see it in her, the same passion that I was starting to feel for the cafe. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked me one morning as we sipped coffee in the back room. "This place needs a lot of work. A lot. It's going to take time, money, and patience. Not to mention, the people in this town are loyal to Clara. They'll be watching, judging. Are you ready for that?" Her honesty was refreshing, and I appreciated her skepticism. It grounded me, reminding me that this wasn't going to be easy. But deep down, I knew I couldn't back down now. I was in this for the long haul. I don't have any illusions about what it's going to take, I told her, my voice steady. But I'm ready. Clara believed in this place, and I want to see it thrive again. I don't know exactly how, but I'm willing to try. Lily studied me for a moment, then nodded. All right, then let's see what you've got, Max. From that point on, we worked together to bring the cafe back to life. Lily knew the ins and outs of the place, the regular customers, the menu, the little quirks that made it special. She showed me how to make the perfect cup of coffee, how to balance the flavors in Clara's signature pies, and even how to arrange the bookshelves in a way that made the space feel inviting. We kept the old charm, but I began to bring in fresh ideas, updating the decor, redesigning the menus, and adding a few modern touches that would attract a new crowd, while keeping the heart of the place intact. The work wasn't always easy. There were days when I felt like I was spinning my wheels, struggling to balance the renovations with managing the cafe. There were moments when I doubted myself, when the bills piled up and the repairs seemed endless. But with every passing day, I felt more and more connected to this place, to the people, and to the legacy Clara had left behind. I realized I wasn't just fixing a building, I was fixing myself. This cafe was the first thing in my life that truly felt like it mattered. Lily and I became closer, not just as coworkers, but as friends. She opened up about her life, how Clara had taken her in years ago when she was struggling, offering her a job and a place to stay. Clara had been more than just a boss to Lily. She had been a mentor, a protector, and a friend. Hearing her talk about Clara with such warmth made me realize just how much of an impact this cafe had on people's lives. It wasn't just a business. It was a place where people found community, comfort, and connection. As the cafe started to take shape, I began to feel like I was finally doing something that mattered. The town's response was mixed at first. Some were wary, unsure of the new changes, while others were curious. But as word spread that the Driftwood Cafe was reopening, I started seeing familiar faces trickle in, and slowly the place began to come alive again. The first day we reopened, we had a steady stream of customers, some regulars who remembered the cafe in its heyday, and some newcomers eager to see what we had done with the place. By the end of the day, I felt a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt in years. But it wasn't just about the cafe. It was about the life I was building, the connections I was making, and the person I was becoming. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The unexpected had turned into something beautiful, and I was finally starting to see the future I had been searching for. The days began to blur together as we worked to settle into the new rhythm of the cafe. Each day was different. Some brought progress, others setbacks, but every day I felt a little more at home in Cascade Bay and a little more sure of my decision. The cafe was growing in ways I hadn't expected. The community had started to warm up to us, and the customers who had been wary at first now greeted us with smiles and genuine curiosity. Even the skeptical regulars from Clara's time seemed to be coming around, giving us a chance to prove ourselves. Lily and I had developed an unspoken understanding, a partnership that felt more natural than anything I had ever experienced at work. She was more than just a colleague. She had become someone I trusted completely, and not just with the cafe, but with my own vulnerabilities. We spent hours together, talking about Clara, about the cafe, about our lives. As the months passed, we fell into a rhythm, with each of us taking on our roles and responsibilities, while also pushing each other to grow. It was challenging, but I could feel myself evolving, in my work, in my choices, and in my outlook on life. There were still tough moments, days when I wondered if I had made the right choice. The cafe wasn't turning a massive profit yet, and the cost of repairs had drained much of my savings. The roof still needed work, and we were behind on some of the more cosmetic touches. But the most rewarding part of it all wasn't the financial success or the renovated walls. It was the people. It was hearing laughter in the cafe again, seeing strangers become friends over a cup of coffee, and watching the place begin to feel alive, vibrant, and full of potential. Clara had seen something in this space, and now I was beginning to see it too. One late afternoon, as I was working on some new menu ideas behind the counter, Lily approached me with a small stack of letters. She placed them on the table between us. I glanced up at her, confused. "What's this?" I asked, picking up one of the envelopes. Lily's face softened, her expression distant for a moment before she met my gaze. "I found these," she said quietly. "They're letters from Clara. She wrote them to you." I felt my chest tighten as I opened the first letter, my hands trembling slightly. It was dated years ago, long before I even knew Clara existed. I read the words, Clara's handwriting familiar yet distant, and with each sentence, my heart ached a little more. It was as if she had known me, had seen my struggles, even from afar. Each letter was filled with love, regret, and a longing to be part of my life. She had watched from a distance, always wishing she could have been there. "Dear Max," the first letter began. "I wonder if you're happy, if you know how much you are loved, even from so far away. I know you are out there, building your life, and I can only hope you are finding peace with the choices you've made. I never stopped thinking about you. I never stopped loving you." The tears came before I even realized it. I wiped them away, but I couldn't stop reading. Each letter was a snapshot of Clara's grief, her desire to connect, and the deep regret she carried. And then, in one of the later letters, she wrote about the cafe, about how she wanted it to be a place of love and belonging. She had wanted to pass it on to me, not just as a business, but as a piece of herself, something she could leave behind. I looked up at Lily, who was watching me carefully. "She never got to tell me all this," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "She never had the chance to explain." Lily sat beside me, her hand resting on the table. "I think she did, Max. In her own way, she told you everything you needed to know, through this cafe, through everything she left behind." I nodded, swallowing hard. I had always thought that Clara's legacy was about the cafe, and it was. But it was more than that. It was about connection, about the chance to create something real, something that could bring people together. And now, as I sat there, reading her words, I realized that this cafe had become more than a business for me, too. It was a bridge, a way to honor Clara's memory, to live up to the potential she had seen in me. Lily and I sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of it all sink in. There was still work to do, still plenty of obstacles ahead. But for the first time in a long while, I felt truly at peace with the decision I had made. Clara had given me more than a cafe. She had given me the chance to change my life, to find my purpose, and to finally feel like I was where I was meant to be. And with Lily by my side, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. It had been months since we'd reopened the cafe, and yet every day still felt like a new beginning. The place was bustling more and more each week, and the small community that had once been wary of my changes was starting to warm to the idea of a fresh start. The Driftwood Cafe was no longer just Clara's legacy. It was becoming mine too. And with that ownership came the realization that I was shaping something meaningful, something that truly mattered. Lily and I had settled into a rhythm that felt natural. She ran the day-to-day operations, managing the staff and the customers with an ease I envied. I was more hands-on with the design and renovation, still tinkering with the little things, reupholstering chairs, redesigning the menu, and adding personal touches that reflected the new energy I was trying to bring to the place. It was hard work, but it felt like the kind of work I had been searching for. Purposeful, fulfilling. I'd always been someone who craved stability, who had worked so hard for security in the corporate world. But here in this cafe, I was learning that security wasn't the end goal. I didn't want a life filled with predictable days and a neatly defined future. What I wanted? Something that made me feel alive, something that made me want to wake up every morning and go to work. This place, the cafe, the community, the people I was meeting, was that something. One evening, after the last customer had left and the cafe was closing down, Lily and I sat at the counter, sipping coffee and talking. The place was quiet, the usual hum of conversation replaced by the sound of the ocean outside, crashing against the rocks. "You know," Lily said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking about Clara a lot lately. She'd be proud of you, Max." I looked at her, surprised. "Proud of me? For what?" "Proud of you for sticking with this," she said, her voice soft. "For not running away when things got hard. for honoring her legacy and making it your own. I know she'd be happy knowing the cafe is in good hands. I felt my chest tighten, and I looked down at my coffee cup. I don't know if I'm the one to carry it, Lily. Some days, I still feel like I'm not doing enough, like I'm not doing it right. Lily smiled, her eyes warm. You're doing fine. Better than fine. Look around you, Max. This place is thriving. People are coming in every day, and they're not just here for the coffee. They're here for the atmosphere, for the sense of community. You've built something special here, and it's yours. You don't need to follow anyone else's blueprint. Her words resonated deeper than I had expected. She was right. I had spent so many years in my corporate life trying to live up to other people's expectations, chasing after promotions and accolades that didn't feel meaningful. But now, I was creating something that was truly mine. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever would be, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, I could honestly say I was proud of what I was building. Thanks, Lily, I said quietly, my voice thick with gratitude. You've been with me every step of the way, and I don't think I could have done this without you. She gave me a small nod, a smile playing at the corner of her lips. I'm just glad you stayed. I knew you were different from the people who come and go around here. You're not in it for the money. You're in it for the right reasons. And that's what makes all the difference. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just drinking our coffee and listening to the waves outside. There was so much still to do, so many plans for the future of the cafe, but in that moment, I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. This was my life now, not the one I had left behind. And as I sat there, with Lily by my side and the Driftwood Cafe finally becoming everything I had hoped it could be, I realized that the unexpected had brought me everything I had ever needed. The months that followed felt like a steady climb. Each day, I worked alongside Lily, tweaking the details, fine-tuning the cafe, and making sure every person who walked through the door felt welcome. We were building something together, and it wasn't just a cafe, it was a community. It was the kind of place where strangers became friends, where people came to find a little peace in their busy lives, and that was everything I had hoped for when I first made the decision to stay. As business improved, I found myself becoming more deeply connected to the town and its people. Cascade Bay was small, and everyone knew everyone else, but it was exactly what I needed. There was no rush, no overwhelming pressure to succeed in ways that didn't align with who I was. I didn't need to prove myself here. The cafe was my proof. It was proof that sometimes, stepping away from the life you thought you wanted can lead you straight to the life you were meant to have. Lily and I had become a team, not just at work, but outside of it as well. We spent hours together, not just managing the cafe, but talking about our lives, our pasts, and everything that had brought us here. I had learned so much about her, how she had come to Cascade Bay looking for a fresh start, how Clara had taken her in when she had nowhere else to go. And I began to see the strength in Lily that I hadn't noticed before. She wasn't just the cafe manager. She was someone who had fought for her place here, just like I was fighting for mine. One evening, after a particularly busy day, we sat down together in the back of the cafe, the soft glow of the pendant lights casting a warm glow across the room. The cafe had finally started to feel like it was ours, not just mine, not just Clara's, but a shared space we had both shaped and cared for. You know, I said, looking around the room, I never thought I'd feel at home in a place like this. Lily raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a smile. What do you mean? I spent so many years chasing after promotions and success in a world that never really felt right. I thought I needed to follow the rules to get ahead. But here I'm building something that feels real. And I'm not just doing it for the paycheck or the title. It's different. Lily's eyes softened, and she took a sip of her drink. Yeah, I get that. I used to feel like I had to keep moving, keep proving I could make it. But here, I finally feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. And it's not about the money. It's about the work we're doing, the people we're helping, and the lives we're changing, even in small ways. I smiled, feeling a sense of pride I hadn't known was possible. This was what it was all about, creating something meaningful. It wasn't always easy, and it wasn't always glamorous, but it was real. And I had found something I could truly believe in. As the evening wore on, the cafe started to empty, the last few customers drifting out into the night. I took a moment to stand at the counter and just look around. The shelves were filled with books, the tables were set just right, and the soft music from the speakers filled the air. It felt like home. Lily stood beside me, her voice breaking the silence. You know, Clara would be proud of you, Max. Proud of everything we've done here. I looked at her, the weight of her words settling in. Clara had entrusted me with this place, and now it wasn't just a building or a business. It was a testament to everything she had hoped for, everything I had learned, and everything I still had to give. I think she would be, I said quietly, and I think I'm finally proud of it too. In that moment, with the quiet hum of the cafe around us, I realized that I had made the right choice. This life, this cafe, this town, it was mine. And for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Sometimes in life, we get so caught up in following the expected path, chasing promotions, titles, and external validation, that we forget to ask ourselves what truly makes us happy. It's important to take risks and embrace the unexpected, even when it feels uncomfortable or uncertain. Change often comes from stepping away from what's familiar and allowing yourself to build something meaningful, even if it's small. Follow your passions, trust your instincts, and remember that fulfillment doesn't come from conforming to others' expectations, but from creating a life that feels authentic and true to who you really are.